Peterson, in this rather powerful translation, masterfully paints for us a picture of that mysterious connection between sin and the law. Because we're under the influence of the dominating mate of sin, he says, the law seems to us not as liberating but as oppressive. And we see the law as hemming us in, as having a really negative effect on us. And we're just incapable of seeing the law clearly and responding to it with an open heart. Peterson's translation of verses 8 to 12 is also good, so I'd like to just have a go and read you that. The law code started out as an excellent piece of work. What happened, though, was that sin found a way to pervert the command into a temptation, making a piece of forbidden fruit out of it. The law code, instead of being used to guide us, was used to seduce us. Without all the paraphernalia of the law code, sin looked pretty dull and lifeless, and I went along without paying much attention to it. But once it got its hands on the law code and decked itself out in all its fancy, finery, I was fooled and fell for it. Peterson's translation shows us clearly that it's the sin common to the whole human race since the time of Adam that ruined Israel's chance to grow through the gift of the law to them on Mount Sinai. Because the law, of course, is good and is holy and is helpful. But somehow or other, it makes things worse. Why? Because it's sin. It's the sin that needs to be tackled first, and then the law will take on a different meaning for us. And the last section now, Romans chapter 7 verses 14 to 25. The law and our inward struggle. Well, can I just say that this is one of the most famous passages in Paul. The use of the first person, me, I, suggests almost that it's Paul's own struggle. This is a little bit of biographical information for us. And certainly in church history, people like Martin Luther interpreted it like that. But if we remember, Paul actually said he was blameless in keeping the law. And further, if we remember, if we know that he seems to be referring to a pre-Christian experience, this inner struggle, because the whole context of chapter 7 is talking from a Jewish or God-fearing way of looking at the law. So to make the struggle with the law a little bit more graphic, and to draw the sympathy of his Jewish Christian people, the Jewish Christian people in Rome, he uses the first person, just to remind them of what it was like before we were Christians. Of course, all this is not to deny that this powerful passage resonates with how we struggle with being faithful to the gospel. The whole passage offers us three statements of the dilemma people find themselves in when they're bounded or bonded by the law. It begins with the surprising statement that the law as we know it is spiritual, pneumatikos, spiritual, but I am fleshly, sarkinos. Pneuma, pneumatic, pneuma, spirit, sarx, flesh. The two realms are contrasted. the spiritual, the fleshly. Paul stresses that the law is holy and spiritual, but it's human beings who, because of sin, are fleshly, weak, and vulnerable. Now, the first description of the dilemma, verses 15 to 17, I become totally perplexed because I've lost control of the moral direction of my life. Another force has taken over me. It's the sin dwelling in me. And the second dilemma, it's a bit more general than that, and speaks of the will to do good versus I can't, I'm powerless, I'm incapable of doing good. Commentators see in this dilemma, the second dilemma, something of the Roman philosopher like Ovid, who has a saying which is quite similar to that. I want to do good, but I find myself doing bad things. And the third dilemma involves a wordplay on the word for law, nomos, and involves a lot of military language. But if you put them all together in this very powerful, extraordinary passage, we can see that Paul wants to do something good, but he just can't. That's the dilemma, the personal struggle we have with the law. If we see it, and we should see it, this is how Paul intends it, as before we've entered the promised land after baptism. It's pre-baptismal. And the final verses in this section are a cry for liberation. What a wretched man I am! Who will rescue me? And it's followed immediately by a response which anticipates the glorious chapter 8. Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ the Lord. Thank you.